Imagine standing at your sister's wedding, surrounded by music, laughter, and flashing cameras, only to have your 7-year-old son tug at your sleeve, look you dead in the eye, and whisper, "Mom, you need to run away." Now, what would you do? This is the story of how one wedding turned into the darkest night of my life, and why my son's warning may have saved me. Before we dive in, make sure you like this video and subscribe to The Twisted Minds, where we unravel stories that will make your heart race and your skin crawl. The air smelled like roses and champagne, thick with perfume and excitement, but I barely noticed it. My sister, Emma, stood radiant at the altar, glowing in her satin gown as if she had been born for this moment. Everyone around me was smiling, clapping, whispering about how beautiful she looked. But all I could feel was this gnawing pit of dread in my stomach, the kind that makes you feel like the floor might give way beneath your feet. Maybe it was stress, maybe exhaustion. I told myself anything to keep the anxiety at bay. But then my son Noah tugged at my sleeve. He looked so small in his little suit, his tie crooked, his hair sticking up in every direction. Normally, I'd smile and kneel down to fix him, but something in his eyes froze me. They weren't the playful eyes of a 7-year-old. They were wide, serious, almost haunted, his tiny hand clenched around my wrist, as if he was afraid I would disappear. He leaned up, barely moving his lips, and whispered words I'll never forget. "Mum, you need to run away. Right now." My heart stopped. My first instinct was to laugh it off, to think maybe he was nervous or overwhelmed by the crowd, but his grip only tightened. He looked over my shoulder, scanning the room, as if he was making sure no one else could hear him. I followed his gaze, but all I saw was smiling faces and clinking glasses. My mind scrambled for logic. Was he scared of the crowd? Was he sick? I knelt down and tried to soothe him, whispering back that everything was okay, that this was Aunt Emma's big day, and he just needed to sit still. But his lips quivered, and a tear slipped down his cheek as he whispered again, this time with more urgency, "Please, Mom, run away, please." That was when the music swelled. The priest's voice boomed, announcing vows, and all eyes turned forward. I wanted to focus. I wanted to clap and smile like everyone else, but Noah's words burrowed into my brain like a splinter. His fear wasn't childish. It was raw, desperate, and for the first time, I felt it too. When Emma turned to say, "I do," I caught sight of her fiancé, Daniel. He looked handsome, charming even, the kind of man who could light up a room with his smile. But in that instant, when his eyes flickered toward me, I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't just me. Noah shrank behind me, hiding, as though Daniel's gaze was something sharp and dangerous. I pushed the thought away, ashamed. This was Emma's happiness. Who was I to spoil it with my paranoia? But Noah wouldn't let go of me. He pressed his face against my side, trembling, whispering again and again, "Please, we have to go. Please, Mom. Something bad is coming." I wanted to tell him he was imagining things. I wanted to pull him close and promise him safety. But in that moment, watching my sister smile at a man whose eyes sent shivers down my spine, I realized I wasn't so sure anymore. The ceremony ended in applause. Everyone rose to their feet, throwing petals, cheering, crying. Emma and Daniel walked down the aisle together, the perfect couple, the perfect future. But Noah's words had infected me, poisoned the air. Every laugh sounded too sharp. Every shadow felt too long. I clapped with everyone else, forcing a smile, but inside I was unraveling. Later, during the reception, I tried to distract Noah with cake, with dancing, with cousins who wanted to play. But he stayed close, never more than a foot away from me, eyes darting nervously as though the room was filled with ghosts only he could see. And then, as the first dance began and the lights dimmed, he tugged on my sleeve again. His whisper was so faint I almost didn't hear it over the music. "Mum, if you don't leave tonight, you'll never leave at all." I froze, my glass trembling in my hand, and that's when I knew. My son wasn't just scared, he was warning me. The music was loud, the kind of joyful rhythm meant to drown out every doubt, but I couldn't shake Noah's whisper. His words clung to me like a stain that refused to wash away. "If you don't leave tonight, you'll never leave at all." It was impossible to ignore. impossible to dismiss as the imagination of a frightened child. Every time Daniel's hand touched Emma's, every time he leaned close to kiss her cheek, I saw Noah flinch, saw his little fists clench, saw his body stiffen as though bracing for something terrible. And suddenly I was bracing too. I tried to shake myself free. It was my sister's wedding, for God's sake. Emma deserved this happiness. She deserved to celebrate without shadows lurking in the corners. Daniel looked like the perfect groom, polished, charming, smiling at every guest with warmth that seemed effortless. He moved through the crowd like he belonged to everyone, and they adored him. But then his eyes found mine, and for just a fraction of a second, his smile dropped. His jaw tightened, his gaze sharpened, and it felt like a mask slipping. The warmth evaporated, replaced by something colder, darker, a warning, almost, as if he was silently daring me to say something, to act on the dread clawing at my insides. I looked away quickly, forcing my hands to stay steady as I cut Noah a slice of cake. But my son wasn't eating. He was watching Daniel with the kind of intensity no child should carry, his fork untouched on the plate. I touched his shoulder, trying to anchor him, maybe anchor myself too, but he only shook his head. "You're not listening, Mom," he whispered, barely audible over the laughter and music. "He's not safe. He's going to hurt you." The words sank like stones in my stomach. Hurt me? What did that mean? Why me? I wanted to press him, to demand answers. But what answers could a 7-year-old possibly give? And yet, his conviction was absolute. His little voice didn't waver. He spoke with the certainty of someone who had seen something I couldn't. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I laughed when people spoke to me, nodded when they toasted, even danced when my cousins pulled me onto the floor. But my eyes never left Noah, and Noah's eyes never left Daniel. The boy followed me everywhere, clutching my hand so tightly I thought my fingers would bruise. Every time Daniel drifted close to us, Noah would shrink back, tugging me toward the door, whispering for us to leave before it was too late. By the time the night wound down and the guests began saying their goodbyes, I was unraveling. My nerves were stretched so thin I thought I might snap. Emma glowed with happiness, hugging everyone, thanking them for coming. Daniel stood beside her like the perfect husband, his arm draped around her waist, his smile fixed in place. But I noticed the way his grip seemed just a little too tight, the way Emma winced ever so slightly before hiding it beneath a laugh. No one else seemed to notice. No one else seemed to care, but Noah did. When it was our turn to say goodbye, Emma threw her arms around me, nearly knocking me off balance in her excitement. "I'm so happy you came," she whispered. "It means everything." Her eyes were wet with tears, and for a moment, I almost forgot my fear. But then Daniel leaned in, his hand pressing firmly against my back, his breath warm near my ear. "Take care of yourself," he murmured, low enough that Emma didn't hear. His tone wasn't friendly. It wasn't even neutral. It was heavy, deliberate, almost threatening. I pulled back quickly, forcing a smile that felt brittle. My heart hammered in my chest, my palms damp. Noah was clinging to me, glaring at Daniel with the fiercest look a 7-year-old could muster. Daniel just smirked, a smirk that said he knew something we didn't. On the drive home, Noah was quiet at first, staring out the window as the streetlights flickered past. I thought maybe he had finally tired himself out. Maybe he'd sleep and forget all of this in the morning. But then his small voice broke the silence. "He's going to find you, Mom. Even if we leave, he doesn't let people go." The words chilled me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white, as if sheer force could hold me together. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that everything was fine, that Emma was happy and Daniel was just adjusting to being part of our family. But the lie wouldn't form, because deep down, in the pit of my stomach, I believed him. That night, after tucking Noah into bed, I stood in the kitchen staring at my phone. I wanted to call Emma, to warn her, to beg her to listen to me. But what would I say? That my son, a child, had a bad feeling about her husband. That I felt unsafe because of a glance, a whisper, a smirk. She would laugh it off. Or worse, she would be angry, accuse me of ruining her happiness out of jealousy or paranoia. So instead, I sat in silence, staring at the shadows stretching across my kitchen wall, replaying Daniel's words in my head. Take care of yourself, a phrase that should have sounded kind, but instead echoed like a threat, and I couldn't shake the certainty that Noah was right. Something was coming, something I couldn't escape. The days after the wedding should have been filled with joy. Emma posted glowing photos on social media, her face alight with the happiness of a new bride. She and Daniel had gone on a short honeymoon trip, a cabin getaway in the mountains, and she messaged me from time to time with pictures of sunsets, wine glasses, and handwritten notes Daniel had left for her. To anyone looking from the outside, it was perfect, too perfect. And somehow, that perfection gnawed at me. Noah didn't stop talking about it. Every night, as I tucked him into bed, he would ask the same question: when are we leaving? At first, I thought he meant moving houses or running away in a childlike sense, like the games kids play when they pack a bag of toys and pretend they're starting a new life. But his tone wasn't playful. His voice was sharp, desperate, filled with urgency that only grew each day. We have to go, Mom. He knows where we live. He'll come. I tried to reason with him. I told him Daniel and Emma were happy, that nothing was wrong, that maybe he had a nightmare that stuck with him. But every time I said it, Noah would shake his head violently, eyes brimming with tears. It's not a nightmare if it's real. Those words, they sliced through me like ice. Then the calls began. At first, they were nothing, just silence on the other end when I answered, or the faint sound of breathing before the line clicked dead. I wanted to dismiss it as telemarketers, a wrong number, anything ordinary. But each time my skin prickled, my pulse raced, and my thoughts went immediately to Daniel. When I didn't answer, voicemails appeared. Empty, just static and the low hum of someone listening. One evening, after the fifth silent call that week, I locked all the doors, shut the curtains, and sat with Noah on the couch, trying to act as though nothing was wrong. The TV flickered, casting moving shadows across the room, but Noah wasn't watching. His small hands clutched mine, his body trembling. Then, out of nowhere, he whispered, "He's watching us right now." I swallowed hard and forced myself to smile, brushing a hand over his hair. "No, baby. We're safe. The doors are locked." But deep down, I didn't believe it. The sensation of being observed lingered in the corners of the room like smoke. The next day, Emma came by. She looked radiant, glowing even more than at the wedding. But there was something about her smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She hugged Noah, then me, and chattered about the honeymoon, how Daniel had carried her over the threshold like a fairy tale, how he had planned every detail perfectly. But while she spoke, I noticed faint bruises along her wrist, half hidden beneath her sleeve. When I asked, her smile faltered only for a moment before she laughed it off. "Oh, that. I tripped at the cabin. I'm such a klutz." She brushed it aside so quickly, so firmly, that I didn't push. But I saw the way Noah's face darkened, the way he pressed closer to me, glaring at her sleeve as if he knew the truth. Later that evening, when Emma used the bathroom, Noah tugged at me again. "He's hurting her already. I told you, Mom. We need to leave before he comes for you." His voice was shaking, but steady, as though he had carried this knowledge forever. When Emma reappeared, she seemed different. Her eyes were too bright, her laugh too forced. And then came the slip. She leaned in to hug me goodbye, her voice low, trembling, almost as if she hadn't meant to say it at all. "Sometimes I think he watches me when I sleep." And my breath caught, but before I could respond, she pulled away, plastering on another perfect smile, waving as though nothing had been said. Daniel picked her up a few minutes later, pulling into my driveway with his gleaming car. He honked once, twice, a sharp sound that made Noah flinch. I watched from the window as Emma hurried to the car, her movement stiff, her smile brittle. When she climbed inside, Daniel glanced at my house. His eyes met mine through the glass, and his lips curled into that same smirk I'd seen at the wedding. A smirk that said, "I know you see me, and I don't care." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind against the window felt like someone watching. Noah woke screaming at 2 a.m., crying that he saw Daniel standing outside his window. I rushed to check, heart hammering, but the yard was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Noah wasn't just dreaming. He was seeing something I was too afraid to admit. The next morning, as I stumbled into the kitchen, exhausted and raw, there was a letter on my doorstep. No envelope, no address, just a folded piece of paper weighed down by a small stone. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside, in sharp, deliberate handwriting, were 4 words that froze me where I stood. Take care of yourself. The same words Daniel had whispered at the wedding. I dropped the letter, my breath caught in my throat, and turned to see Noah standing behind me. His face was pale, his eyes wide, but he didn't look surprised. He just whispered, almost to himself, I told you, he's coming. The letter haunted me. Those 4 words, take care of yourself, burned into my brain, echoing in every corner of my mind. I tucked the paper into a drawer, as if hiding it would make the threat vanish. But I couldn't shake the sense that Daniel's presence lingered in my home, even when he wasn't physically there. The walls themselves felt tainted, the air heavier, colder. Every night I double-checked the locks. Every night Noah slept curled against me, trembling with nightmares. For a while, I considered going to the police. But what would I tell them? That my son had a bad feeling. That my brother-in-law had whispered an odd phrase at a wedding and left me a note with the same words. They'd laugh me out of the station. Worse, they might call Daniel, tip him off, and make everything 10 times more dangerous. It was during one of those sleepless nights, sitting at the edge of my bed with the letter in my hand, that Noah woke up. His small fingers reached for mine, squeezing tight. You don't believe me, do you? His voice cracked, raw with both fear and disappointment. My heart splintered. I pulled him into my arms, whispering into his hair that I did believe him, that I always had. And I realized then, it didn't matter if anyone else believed. All that mattered was keeping him safe. 2 days later, Emma invited us to dinner. Daniel really wants to see you, she said over the phone, her tone bright but brittle. He thinks you've been distant. The word hung heavy in the air. Distant. As if my fear of her husband was nothing more than rudeness. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to refuse. But then I heard Noah whisper from the background, his little face pale as he shook his head violently. Don't go, Mom. Don't go. I tried to make an excuse, but Emma pressed harder. Please. For me. Just come. It'll be fun. Her voice cracked on the last word, and my stomach churned. Something in her tone didn't match her words. It was pleading, desperate. Like she needed me there, maybe even needed someone to see what she couldn't say aloud. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That evening, Noah clung to my hand as we walked up to Emma and Daniel's front door. The house was beautiful, spotless, almost too perfect. But the moment the door opened, the air shifted. Daniel stood there, tall and broad, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. Well, he said, his voice smooth as silk. We were beginning to think you didn't like us anymore. He bent down to Noah's level, forcing eye contact. My son's grip tightened on my hand until it hurt, his little body shaking. Daniel's smile widened. What's the matter, champ? Don't I scare you? Do I? He winked, but there was no warmth in it. It wasn't playful, it was a challenge. The dinner was suffocating. Emma tried to keep conversation flowing, talking about work, about plans for the house, about nothing at all. But her laughter was forced, her eyes darting nervously to Daniel every few minutes, as if waiting for his approval. Daniel, on the other hand, was calm, confident, his hand never leaving Emma's shoulder. Every time she stumbled in her words, his fingers tightened just slightly, almost imperceptibly, until she corrected herself. I watched frozen, my appetite gone, my body tense with dread. At one point, Daniel turned his attention to me. You know, it's funny, he said, swirling his glass of wine. Emma tells me you've always been the protective one, always watching out for her, always suspicious of the people she brings into her life. It must be exhausting, being so paranoid all the time. I forced a smile, but my heart pounded in my chest. He was baiting me, testing me, trying to push me into revealing myself. I said nothing, just sipped my water. His smile grew wider, darker. "Take care of yourself," he added softly, almost a whisper, but loud enough for only me to hear. The room spun. My fork clattered against my plate, and Noah's hand shot out to grab mine again. His voice was small, but clear. "We have to go. Please, Mom." I made some excuse about Noah not feeling well, scooped him into my arms, and stood. Emma looked disappointed, but there was something else in her eyes too, something pleading. Her lips parted, as though she wanted to say more, but Daniel's hand tightened on her shoulder again, and she fell silent. We left quickly, the night air biting at our skin as we hurried to the car. Noah didn't speak until we were halfway home. "He's going to hurt her?" he whispered, staring out the window. "And when she's gone, he's coming for you." My grip tightened on the steering wheel, tears blurring my vision. My son was only 7 years old, but his words carried the weight of prophecy. And deep down, I knew he was right. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps. Every shadow stretched too long, too close. When my phone buzzed at midnight, I jumped. A text message. No name, no number, just the same 4 words as before: "Take care of yourself." I dropped the phone, my heart slamming against my ribs. Noah stirred in his sleep, muttering something I could barely hear. I leaned closer, brushing his hair from his forehead. He whispered it again, his voice hoarse, heavy with warning. "Run away, Mom, please, before it's too late." And for the first time, I realized he wasn't just afraid. He was right. There was nowhere left to hide. The night after that dinner, I couldn't close my eyes without feeling Daniel's stare boring into me. Those 4 words, "Take care of yourself," flashed behind my eyelids every time I blinked. My phone buzzed 3 more times before dawn, each message the same, each one colder than the last. By sunrise, I had made up my mind Noah and I needed to leave. It didn't matter if Emma believed me. It didn't matter if I looked paranoid or crazy. My son had been right from the beginning, and I wasn't going to gamble with his safety anymore. I started packing quietly that morning, shoving clothes into bags, pulling cash from the drawer where I kept it hidden. Noah watched silently, his small face pale but his eyes steady. "Good," he whispered. "It's the only way." His voice carried no relief, only the heavy certainty of someone who had seen the end before it arrived. But just as we zipped the last bag shut, the doorbell rang. The sound split the air like a blade. My heart stopped. Noah froze, his little body trembling, eyes wide with terror. "It's him," he mouthed. I crept to the window, my breath caught in my throat. Daniel's car was parked outside, gleaming in the morning sun like a predator crouched and waiting. And there he was, standing on my porch in his pressed shirt, smiling faintly, as though this were nothing more than a casual visit. My hands shook as I pulled Noah back, motioning for him to stay quiet. The bell rang again. Then a slow knock, not hurried, not impatient, just steady, deliberate. "Open up." Daniel called through the door, his voice smooth, unhurried. "We should talk." Every instinct screamed, "Don't." I pressed Noah against me, holding my breath, praying he would think we weren't home. But then my phone buzzed. A new text message, 4 words, again and again, glowing on the screen: "Take care of yourself." And then another, seconds later: "I know you're there." I almost screamed. My hands fumbled as I grabbed the phone, shoving it into my pocket as though hiding it could undo the reality pressing against my door. Noah's whisper was sharp, urgent, slicing through my panic. "Run, please, Mom. Right now?" The doorknob rattled, once, twice, slowly, as though Daniel was enjoying the game. I bolted. Grabbing Noah's hand, I dragged him through the back door, bags in tow, heart racing so violently I thought it might give out. We slipped into the yard, down the alley, and toward the car. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound made me flinch. I fumbled with the keys, throwing the bags into the back seat, shoving Noah inside. My hands trembling so badly it took 3 tries to fit the key into the ignition. And just as the engine roared to life, I saw him. Daniel, standing at the end of the alley, his smile gone, his face carved into something darker, sharper. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just stood there, watching as I drove away, his eyes locking with mine through the rearview mirror. A promise. I didn't stop driving for hours. I didn't answer the phone, even when Emma called again and again. When I finally pulled into a small motel 2 towns over, Noah collapsed on the bed, exhausted. I sat in the dim light, staring at my phone, my chest tight. There were voicemails from Emma, her voice trembling, breaking, begging me to call back. "He's not who I thought he was," she whispered in one. "I don't know what to do. Please, help me." Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to go to her, to save her, but I couldn't risk Noah. I couldn't walk back into the trap Daniel had laid for us. The choice was tearing me apart. My son's safety or my sister's freedom. That night, as Noah slept beside me, I sat awake, staring at the dark ceiling. His words echoed in my head. "If you don't leave tonight, you'll never leave at all." He had saved us. His warning had been the only thing keeping us alive. But Emma was still inside the cage, and Daniel wasn't the kind of man who would ever let his prey go willingly. The next morning, I opened my phone again. Another message from Daniel, just 2 words this time: "Found you." My breath hitched, my vision swam. He wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to let us go. I looked at Noah, sleeping soundly, his little chest rising and falling. He had been right about everything, and now it was up to me to decide whether we kept running forever, or whether I finally found the strength to fight back. Because Daniel wasn't just a shadow anymore. He was a storm. And the only question left was whether we would survive it.